had to, our sponsors wanted to change our hotspot, and it failed. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
So, who can be our chief guest?
Maharaj, can I try?
Okay. That's a little slow. We'll try. Be very nice if it works. Good to see you. Okay. Let me then close the camera because I'll probably save some of the space. Close the camera. Okay. Okay. Share the screen. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Janabalaba Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Jamuna Tira Vanna Chari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Your voice is fading out. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.36. This is the last of the 4 nutshell verses of Bhagavatam. Etavadeva jijnasyam.
Etadeva jigyasam.
Etavadeva jijnasyam.
Etavadeva jigyasam.
Tattvam jijnasunatmanaha.
Tattva jigyasunatmanaha.
Anvaya vyatarik ahabhyam.
Anvaya vyatirekabhyam.
Yat sarvata sarvada.
Yatsayat sarvatra sarvada.
You chant and the people respond.
Etavadeva jigyasam.
Etavadeva jijnasyam.
Tattva jigyasunatmanaha.
Tattvam jijnasunatmanaha.
Anvaya vitarakabhyam.
Anvaya vyatirekabhyam.
Yatsya sarvatra sarvada.
Yatsat sarvatra sarvada. Another devotee can chant.
Etavadeva jijnasyam.
Etavadeva jijnasyam.
Tattva jijnasunatmanaha.
Tattvam jijnasunatmanaha.
Anvaya vyatirekabhyam.
Anvaya Vyatirekavyam
Yat sarvatra sarvadam.
Yat Sarvata Sarvada. Ladies?
Etavariva jidnyasam
Etavad eva jijnasyam
tattva jitsunamanaha
tatvam jignasun atmanaha
anvaya vyatirekabhyam
anvaya vyatirekabhyam
yatsyat sarvatra sarvada.
yasyat sarvata sarvada. Another, the lady?
एतावदेव sorry Mataji. Go ahead Mataji. एतावदेव जिज्ञास्यम्
Etavad eva jijnasyam
तत्त्वजिज्ञासुनात्मनः
tatvam jignasun atmanaha
अन्वयाव्यतिरेकाभ्याम्
anvaya vyatirekabhyam
यत्स्यात् सर्वत्र सर्वदा.
yasyat sarvata sarvada. Another, one more.
एतवादेव जिज्ञास्याम्
Etavadeva jignasyam
तत्त्वजिज्ञासूनात्मनः
tatvam jignasunatmanaha
अन्वयाव्यतिरेकाभ्याम्
anvayavyatirekavyam
यत्स्यत् सर्वत्र सर्वदा.
yatsyat sarvata sarvada. Etavat, harsh,
Etavad,
up to this.
up to this.
Eva,
Eva,
certainly.
certainly.
Jijnasyam,
Jigyasam,
yeah, to be inquired.
to be inquired.
Tattva,
Tattva,
the absolute truth.
the absolute truth.
Jijnasuna,
Jigyasuna,
by the student.
by the student.
So we have almost the same word, no? Jignasyam and jignasuna.
Yeah.
Atmanaha,
Atmanaha,
of the self.
of the self.
And self is capitalized, so it must mean the supreme self. Anvaya,
Anvaya,
directly.
directly.
Vyatirek abhyam,
Vyatirekabhyam,
indirectly.
indirectly.
We were very curious about the exact meaning of these words. So we actually looked in learnsanskrit.cc, which is a good source. And anvaya is more like it means following sequentially, one after another, cause and effect. In public translates here, the Acharya says directly. Via Tirekavyam comes back as via Tireka, which means in contrast, indirectly. And it's referred to logical sequences, and in Prabhupada's books also, Lord Chaitanya is talking about understanding scriptures. So the direct meaning of the scriptures, following logically, or how the scriptures are maybe giving contrasts to show things. Yat,
Yat,
whatever.
whatever.
Syat,
Syat,
it may be.
maybe.
Yat syat. Sarvatra,
Sarvatra,
in all space and time.
in all space and time.
Sarvada,
Sarvada,
in all circumstances.
in all circumstances.
So Lord Brahma, Vishnu, Lord Brahma has done the austerities which have been requested by the voice coming from the sky. He's submissive, and by doing those austerities, following principles, chanting rounds, japavada, he becomes purified. And then he has direct darshan of the Lord's abode. You can see him directly. And when he sees him directly, then the Lord shakes hands with him. So this is doubtless about the whole perspective context that is completely personal. And when the impersonalist Mayavadi philosophers try to draw out different meanings from these things, it's really quite ridiculous. Because actually, the context makes it so clear. It's one person talking to another. It's one inferior person who's actually quite a great person. Lord Brahma is a great person, but he's inferior in comparison to the Lord, who is showing his abode, shaking hands with him, and trying to satisfy his desires. Brahma wants to understand the creation of the universe. Okay. So then Vishnu gives an explanation of this in 3 verses. And then he's finishing everything off, and he says, Etavat, up to this. What is this? Well, it's the previous verses. Etavat eva jijnasam tatvam jijnasum atmanaha anvaya vyatirekabhyam yat sarvatra sarvada. Okay. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of a Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this. Up to what? In all circumstances, in all space and time, both directly and indirectly. Okay. Must certainly search for it up to this, up to what I've explained to you in the previous verses. In all circumstances, and in all time and space, both directly and indirectly. So we can be in different places in different times, but within those there may be different circumstances. Today somebody is the king, same place, same time, different circumstances. So giving a very, very nice explanation. And the purport, of course, is very long. These purports, are several pages, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. So we're looking through it here, and Prabhupada says, to unfold the mystery of Bhakti Yoga as it is explained in the previous verse is the ultimate stage of all inquiries, or the highest objective for the inquisitive. So the previous verse is the one where the Lord says, well, first verse, Lord Vishnu says, aham, how's it go? Aham something. Aham evasam evagre. Nanyad yat sat param. Okay. Before there was anything, it was I, O Brahma, existing only. While there is anything, it also is me. And after, when everything's finished, it will be me alone which exists. Aham, 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 aham. Yeah. And then he says, whatever appears to be have any kind of value, any kind of permanent value, any kind of deep value, rather than superficial value, but it's not connected to me, is like the light seen in the shadows. It's a very, very nice analogy, very specific. Then he continues with the verse that Prabhupada is referring to here, the previous verse. And he says, just as the material elements, like for example, we have yarn, and we make a sweater out of the yarn. So after a while, the whole ball of yarn is gone, nowhere. And we have a nice sweater. Okay, you can offer it to Aniruddha. Okay, not too much yarn. But then, so somebody may think, oh, the yarn no longer exists, but it's right there. It's all a matter of perspective. We're looking at it from one perspective, and we see the yarn crossing itself in relationship to a different self, different strands, and these kind of things. But if we start at the end of the yarn, either end, and look at it from that way, then we see the same yarn, which was rolled into a ball, is now here also. So same way I'm looking around my room, I'm sitting on my bed here, looking out the window to the light shaft, looking across at a little bench in the wall and a COVID mask. Yeah. So all these things are actually Krishna. Of course, the more detailed idea is he has his energies, he has his expansions, he has his incarnations. And that's the Bhagavatam, the complete science. But it's all Krishna. His fingers, his arms, his hands, his eyes, his legs, all these kind of things. It's not separated. So to unfold the mystery, Prabhupada says, of Bhakti Yoga, as it is explained in the previous verse, is the ultimate stage of all inquiries. Okay. To explain the mystery that Krishna is everywhere. Because how do we explain it? So many ways we have to explain it. We can explain it as pantheism. Krishna is the taste in water, the fragrance of the earth, the light of the sun, the ability in man. We can explain it through Varna Ashram Dharma. The natural social arrangements exist, and people should adopt these and understand through the scriptures and by guidance of spiritual master what is their particular duty in terms of the social body. So we can understand it by introspection, meditation, yoga. Prabhupada says here by karma yoga, jnana yoga, jnana yoga, raja yoga, bhakti yoga. Then we can get complete satisfaction. We can become completely free from fear by understanding how the supreme enjoyer is present in Varnashram. Otherwise, it becomes this distorted, vitiated system, used for trying to satisfy selfish, vain, superficial goals, based upon the senses being the self, which is like decorations on a dead body, because it's not engaged in Krishna service. So it looks good, but it's not satisfying anybody. The most rich, powerful men in the world are not satisfied by all their political power and everything else. Mr. Putin has so much respect, power, authority, but is he satisfied? Probably not. Almost all these people have very strong access to heroin, everything else, and are using it. To engage in self-realization is the responsibility of every living entity in developed consciousness. One who is developed in consciousness must certainly make inquiries into the mystery of the self, of the cosmic situation, and the problems of life in all spheres and fields, social, political, economic, cultural, religious, moral, etc. And in their different branches. But here the goal of all such inquiries is explained. When people are absorbed in their duties or their work or their activities or their relationships with others, it's like animals. They don't think about these things. So if they're relatively happy, which means that they have a nice background of suffering. You always think of Hansel and Gretel, and the Brothers Grimm. Harsh, do you know the Brothers Grimm? Their fairy tales. Have you heard about those?
No, Mara, but I have heard neighbors' envy is my pride.
You've heard what?
Neighbors' envy is my pride.
Okay, that's probably one of their lessons. I'm not sure when they existed, but in the West, the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm were a very big tradition. I think Hansel and Gretel is one of those. And it describes, one after another. They're from Middle Europe where it's cold, dark, no food in the winter, and all these terrible things. Once upon a time, for example, there was a very nice prince and princess. And they were very happy little boys and girls. And their father, the king, and their mother, the queen, loved them very much, and everybody was very happy. But then somehow or other, the queen died. And after a few years, the king was become attracted to and married a second wife. But she was very envious of the little boy and girl. So she arranged for the huntsman to take them off and kill them. But he let them go instead and said, never come back. I will take a heart of these two animals and give it to the queen and say, I killed you. So they had to wander in the forest, and they were hungry, and it was cold. And finally, they came across a very nice house and a very nice old lady. But she captured them and was going to make them fat and eat them. And she was a witch, and she, cut the boy's fingers off, and on like that. So suffering for maybe 2 years, on and on, horrible. But then somehow or other, the good fairy found them, took them back, and the evil stepmother ran off the balcony and killed herself. And her father was so happy to see them and promised never to get married ever again. And they lived happily ever after. And so many of them, almost all of them, have the same kind of thing of horrible, material existence, and then some resolution, and they lived happily ever after. But that's why sometimes we're absorbed in our life, or our karma, our activities, and you talk to people, and they're Americans, and they won the World War, and so many things like that. And they're happy, and they're thinking, now I will live happily ever after. Because they have this background of contrast, of suffering like anything. But after a while, of course, things change, and the Americans are no longer happy, are frustrated and feeling difficulty in so many ways. So when people are absorbed in relative material happiness and they're not intelligent to see what it is, it's almost impossible to communicate to them. But when the other perspective is there and they're realizing their background, okay, then they can become inspired to make such inquiries. So this is everybody is searching after this. And if somebody more serious, of course, they become jnanis, they become bhakti yogis. I can kind of summarize here because it's very long. Okay. Then Prabhupada says, okay, everyone is engaged in various kinds of scriptural inquiries, but the Srimad Bhagavatam gives answers to all the various students of self-realization. This ultimate objective of life is not to be searched out without great labor or perseverance. One who is imbued with such sincere inquiries must ask the bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession from Brahmaji, and that is the direction given here. So based very much upon descending knowledge, Prabhupada says, not by good physical senses or a very fertile brain. So when we have these abilities in a certain sense, but these are useful when they're applied to understanding the scriptures. It's a very important point. We've been trained in the modern world to think that all these old books and everything else are useless, or they're products of imagination, of evolution. Different sages have evolved these books. But the real thing is to use our logical abilities in these things. But where do those come from? We're also being trained in those things. Where did Euclid get his principles of geometry? So there's a long discussion here. But the basic principle is that we have to understand these things really with help from an authority. And Lord Brahma is a very, very natural source of help for us because he received the scriptures and the proper resources like that. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam, and we can see it from personal experience in Prabhupada's presentation within the modern world. It gives us such in a very, very clear relationship with anybody who's sincere, anybody who's intelligent, even people who are challenging and are proud, scientists. If they're sincere and they're willing to persevere in their investigation, then they become just like us, gradually, sincerely convinced that yes, Srimad Bhagavatam is giving very, very means of understanding these things, very good system, very good process, perspectives from so many different viewpoints in the Bhagavatam, so I can actually practically apply it in my life. What I'm going to get from physical science, this is a very limited idea of matter, which may be true in certain circumstances. So the importance of disciplic successions. Okay. Yeah. The revealed scriptures give directions directly to understanding the Lord, but because the bewildered living entities are blinded by the glaring reflection in the darkness, they're unable to find the truth of the revealed scriptures. And Prabhupada gives the example of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So if we're in a dark place, and we're cutting ourselves on things, and nasty, slimy things are there, and so many problems, bad things to breathe, then there's this reflected light coming in, and that's encouraging. But because it is coming from the scriptures, it's real light. This is Maya Parita Jnana. A lot of discussions in Upanishad about this. These are people who are taking advantage of the real light of scripture, but then they're distorting it to direct their followers towards misconceptions about what is life, and usually to glorify themselves. And here Prabhupada is quoting Bhagavad Gita, because of all the scriptures it's there, and all over the world it's translated. Everybody likes it because it's real light. But when it becomes distorted and presented in so many ways, then actually people become bewildered, because instead of helping them, it does the exact opposite. So many kinds of yoga are being presented, because it has the potency of the Bhagavad Gita behind it in different ways, then it makes it even more difficult to see the truth. Oh, this is coming from Bhagavad Gita. This is so brilliant. These words are so wonderful. I don't need your simple practical understanding of life. So this is blinded by the glaring reflection in darkness. Glaring reflection in darkness. Okay, common phrase. So much about the Bhagavad Gita here. Okay. Then Prabhupada goes on. Indirectly, it is said that the whole Vedic. I just wanted to let you know, Kama Bharati says. Indirectly, it is said that the whole Vedic social construction of human society is so made that everyone acts as a part and parcel of the complete body of the Lord. Oh, okay, thank you. Hello?
We
Hare
can hear
Krishna
you.
Maharaj.
Hello?
Yes, we
Hare
can
Krishna.
hear you.
I can
Yes,
hear you
Maharaj.
now.
Thank you for the nice class and nice thoughts. We just have one statement corroborating your statement. These days, everywhere is taking the or the words of the doctor very seriously. Everybody is interviewing them and trying to follow their advices. It's just like we are supposed to taught to consult the brahmanas. Then I got the point which you said that physical science tests are not inquired so much, but life scientists are inquired about these things, which again highlights the point that maybe science, the way it was, it's getting or losing the interest of the common man, and gradually things like life, spirit, or other things may come up as per the crisis comes up in the world. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Actually, in Cheviot Hills, when Prabhu was walking with Damodar sometimes in the mornings, he was saying that because people have access to all times and all places now, different times and places more than they had in the past. They're not being deceived by the promises and the things of the so-called scientists, the rational empiricists. Oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. And they're seeing that it doesn't work. Well, physical sciences will generate chemicals to make medicines to cure these diseases. Will generate chemicals to make fertilizers to produce food. So like you're saying, then the hegemony of the physical sciences is breaking down to a large degree, and people more concerned with biology, even if it's not exactly based upon the laws of physics. So one more point Jiva Goswami makes, he makes this point in this verse, that the social system, we should investigate God indirectly through the social system, our position in it, and we can realize Krishna. And the other point is that all times and circumstances means that devotional service can be applied by anybody, children, adults, women, uncivilized people. It was true in the past, it is true as present, it is true in the future. Any one of the senses, when properly applied, can give us complete results like that. So in this sense also, if we have any devotional service to Krishna, we can start to apply it a little bit. Anybody can do it, any place we can do it. We can chant anywhere, for example. And if we do that, then we start to see, with great detail, that what was said before is true. God is all pervasive. He has variety in his all pervasiveness and different aspects which we can understand. And as we understand them, then we can have proper relationship with him. We'll become happy. We can realize Sat Chit Ananda. And then all the fears and everything else disappear. Can you hear us now? Kama Gayatri Devi Dasi? Kama Gayatri Devi Dasi doesn't say anything. Yeah.
It's audible, Maharaj.
To you, that's because you're Indian, sir. You have come from superior race and nation.
Hare Krishna Gurudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You can also heard in US too, Gurudeva.
Okay. Were you Lord Brahma in your last lifetime?
Definitely not, Gurudeva.
Are you going to be Lord Brahma in your next lifetime? Is the ultimate engineer?
I highly doubt it, Gurudeva. But yeah, yes, Gurudeva, please.
You can have 1,000 heads for parallel processing.
With one head itself, I'm struggling so much, Gurudeva. With 1,000 heads, I couldn't tolerate.
Software engineer. Wow. So this is a very, very nice verses. For me, it's very satisfying in my career. We've come from Santa Eulalia yesterday. We closed down half the stuff. Our non-COVID virus is you can see it's gone away almost completely. And now we're struggling because everybody's in the testing clinics after Christmas and New Year's, and it's almost impossible to get the test. Now we got to get the test 24 hours before the flight. So many problems. But we're here in Abhiram's place near the airport. Very nice place. Learning more about him and everything else. Panchatattva's gone off to do Sankirtan while we're gone, and they're waiting for us, calling 3 times a day from Bolivia. So if we can get the test we got the ticket, and we'll try and take a little rest today, and we have to be in the airport. Flight's at 1 o'clock, so we got to be there by like about 11 o'clock or something, maybe something, because we have only taking carry-on luggage. It'll be 1 hour difference. 1 hour difference. So what Mangalartik is listed there at, I think it's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. We'll try and tweet them more information. But okay, if it's 4:30 is Mangalartik there, it'll be 3:30 on the East Coast, and 2:30 in Houston. So anyway, we'll try and tweet our information to get it sorted out. But at least tomorrow there'll probably be nothing in the morning because we'll be flying in the airplane. Fly all night, wait in line. And then when we arrive at the airport, El Alto is highest commercial airport in the world. 13,333 feet. 13333. And that means we're going to see if we don't have a brain stroke as soon as we land. And Mataresh is on the 21st story of the building. So anyway, what we'll be doing, we're taking with us, Abhiram is finishing off our Spanish translation edition of our Tavapachi Pache. So we'll be trying to introduce it there and have classes on that. Everything be in Spanish, trying to record stuff for the movie. And then we'll come back on the 20th, And again, and then we'll be here all the way until March. That's our current schedule. Things are going okay. Just keep on chanting, and a lot of psychological anxiety among many devotees, ourselves. But I see when you get up early and chant, you stimulate your internal tissues, and in your subtle body, your prana, with nice positive chanting, good attitude. Then all day long, it's very nice. A little association with other enlightened people, you feel energy and strength, and go on developing the Sankirtan. So any comments or questions by anybody? We have your Abhinandan, Apsara Gopi, Chaitanya Charitamrita Das.
I have a comment, Gurudeva, especially this has been there in my mind quite a long time. The class you gave, the class you gave it today is a wonderful one, Gurudeva. But I personally felt the outside world, or the world where we are living, most of us don't believe there exists a world which is spiritual and give a continuous ever happiness, ever happily ever after kind of. We don't believe it, and we don't access it, especially when we go to school. From elementary school, we will be brainwashed. There is no God. These are all planets. They came, and this is all science. And you see what you see in your front of your eyes. And, we have been fed like that, and continuously every day, 8 hours a day. And most of the people they don't inquire. They think that I have only one life, let me enjoy it. And in schools they put competitions, and they compete one another, and the better you do, the better you enjoy, the better you live. So you always competing with your fellow, and it's a competitive world. So it's a very rare people get an opportunity early in their life, have access to God consciousness, and have some faith infused by parents and the teachers. But most of the time it is so unfortunate. Practically I have seen in my life, my brothers, and we're all grew up differently. I grew up with some God consciousness to begin with. My brothers are a little different, and now my children are completely different. My brother's children are completely different. And I think accessing this, what you mentioned, Gurudeva, I think that is where it has to go more into the public. and the acceptance of the public for this kind of knowledge, should come from the leaders of the community to support, the people whoever is doing this kind of. Otherwise, the acceptance is a little, Gurudeva. This is personally what I felt it, Gurudeva.
Well, this is very, very, very important point. Very nice. What big, are there any big prisons near where you are?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, Gurudeva. I don't think so.
There must be some of them all over the place. Out in California, of course, there was Alcatraz, and that was moved to San Quentin. There's Folsom Prison. And Chandradas works in the Snake River Prison. So I know on the East Coast also, there are just very famous prisons that hold, 20,000 prisoners and so on. And if you go and do programs in the prisons, we went with Chandradas, he was a psychologist. First they had to, have our identification like 1 month before we went to the program. They ran a complete check on us. Okay, no problem. And we went there, and then they give you this thing that says, like, you sign a thing saying, we're not responsible for your life or anything else. You realize that we're doing our best, but you're entering into a prison and everything else, okay. Then they give you a button to put on your waist, and if something happens, you push it, then it automatically, policemen will descend from the sky to protect you. And then you go inside, and you realize that there's no way you can get out. Every single inch is covered, locked. And you're surrounded in his prison. To get into his prison, you either have to murder somebody or rape somebody. Yeah, and a few people are arsonists who do that kind of stuff. And so it's incredible just being in there, because your bhava, your consciousness. Okay. So now a few people, they turn around, they start to accept some kind of responsibility for their life and how they're going to improve themselves. So many people are in there, and they're fighting against the system. They think, no, I never did anything wrong. Life is tough. You got to get people before they get you, and take what's yours. I mean, so many very violent, selfish kinds of consciousness. So, see, that this is a very important point, because we shouldn't become discouraged and think, oh, not so many people are taking to this. Well, this is where we are. One of Prabhupada's godbrothers, Sridhar Maharaj, and devotee asked him, he said, oh, Lord Chaitanya personally came, and then maybe within 100 years after he was here, there was big problems in the movement, everything else. How is this possible, this Lord Chaitanya directly here? So Sridhar Maharaj began to laugh, and he said, Baba, this is the material world, Baba. He said, what to speak of something spiritual? He said, it's very, very, very rare to find anything even good like that. And so I think it's a very, very important perspective, is that it's always going to be a struggle. Even if we make, half the people in the material world, if we have somehow or other, we convince them to change their consciousness, and how many are really going to do it? They have free will. Then automatically, more people will move in. There'll be more criminals. The bacteria will become human beings and have to go out of it. Yeah. So this is a very important perspective, is that, we always try, and sometimes Krishna does inspire Emperor Ashoka, and sometimes he inspires Constantine to become a Christian. And we see these things, but the basic fundamental principle of where we are, we're in a mental hospital. We're in a what do you call it, a prison. And so Prabhupada is saying we shouldn't become discouraged if people, don't all become devotees and realize, like we're realizing it. We begin to realize actually how rare we are, and how rare a society of composed of people like that is, and so on. And then, trying to do what we can do, because there'll always be some effect. The other side of the coin is that when we preach, people somehow or other, even Hiranyakasipu, he didn't want to hear it, but he heard it. And so what'll happen is that it will have an effect. And then maybe again, because we didn't want to hear it, but somehow or other we heard it, because we got a human body, and now we're in the bodies we're in now, where we're starting to take things a little bit serious and so on. So is that some kind of perspective on your observations?
Yes, Gurudeva, especially the way you explained about the present scenario and things. Yes, Gurudeva. One thing comes to my mind is this is Kali Yuga and it has to go away. And the only way is, unless until adharma is prevailed for this cannot be Satya Yuga. It never going to be a Satya Yuga. So that's a given fact. So whatever best we can and we can do, with ourselves and around people around us, and I think that is what I think, Gurudeva, is basically.
But there's a lot more to learn.
Yes.
Kalodos Nidevajan. But there's one good thing about Kali Yuga. What is that?
Kirtana Deva Krishnasya.
Yeah. The holy names always work. But the good thing about Kali Yuga is, well, I won't become a devotee, but I'll go to Brahma Loka, I'll go to Swarga, I'll go to Maharloka, I'll be a good person on this earth. No, Kali Yuga is black or white. You're going to go to hell or you're going to go to Goloka. Now take your choice.
Yeah, I like those choices, Gurudeva. Instead of hanging in the middle, either way is good. Either go to the bottom of it or go to the top of it.
Yeah. So Kali Yuga, it has its advantages, But with this understanding scientifically where we are, what's happening, then we can see how to, like you're saying, how to apply the medicine. More and more people helping. Yeah. Wow. Anybody else have any comments, questions, complaints, anxieties here? Yes, Gandharva Das.
Please accept my humble obeisances, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. I have a very simple question, Guru Maharaj, concerning to your class, to the topic you have talked about. There is a very simple question I have never answered, which is how to achieve Vijnana from Jnana, and what is the process and what is the limit between the two.
So how to distinguish dhyana from jnana?
Yes, and what is the process to achieve Vijnana from Jnana?
Okay. Sometimes I've seen Prabhupada Acharyas, they include dhyana as a part of jnana. Jnana means knowledge, but generally speaking, for example, what we're doing right now is jnana, in some respect. Jnana means applying grammar to things, to organize things, subject, object, verb, adverb, like that, or mathematics, counting 1, 2, 3, 1 apple, 5 pears, 3 mangoes, 2 pineapples. So all these different mathematical systems we learn, counting, geometry, algebra, and then we'll call it formal logic. If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. There are a lot of these things we learn. And this kind of analytical ability, rational ability, this is all jnana. And of course, it's useful in Krishna consciousness. We can start to, in any name given by an acharya is potent. Oh, okay. So Jehovah, Allah, yeah. So that's kind of what when we take our thinking processes, because the animals and the little children, they all think, have thoughts, they react, and so on. But it's kind of just like arithmetic. They automatically react. They don't wait to do anything, to think, to organize things in their mind. Their mind is just pretty much connected to their senses. It's karmis. But when we start to have some ability to stop and adjust things, this is jnana. But then when we come to the next level, which is dhyana, is meditation, contemplation, and then we can start to take things in, not just in Euclidean points and lines, but more iconographically. You know? And so in your profession of teaching art, you know, there's a kind of holistic perspective, iconographic perspective, ability to contemplate, to meditate, that you students start to pick up. They start to become intuitive. You know? Now, of course, we haven't got much language for this in the West, in our modern education, but it's there. You know, if the theater has its own tradition of becoming introspective, getting free from the personalities, so we can change them like that and see how it actually works. You know? And so, of course, in our tradition, this is called Smaranam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. And right in Upadeshamrita, there's 4, 5, 6, 7 different levels described of Anushmaranam and things like that. And so that's a little bit of a summary. Does that help at all?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, of course. I have an additional question concerning to your answer. So you say that intuition is a factor that must appear cooperating with intellect, so things have a different dimension, no? Not only by measurement, but by contemplation. Okay, but this intuition in the West seems to be the contrary of intellect. No, they are considered opposites. How to conceal both concepts? For example, when I teach somebody and I say you have to reconcile your intellectual practice with your intuition. How to see this?
I have to open the window here, else I'm going to suffocate. Second. This is the moving all the time. Okay, loading, unloading. Okay, windows open. Oxygen. Okay. Okay. From what again, my experience of looking at this stuff, the situation usually is that we're trained, basically in logic, we're usually trained in terms of Euclidean geometry. We're understanding that's the logical system we're using. Higher mathematicians, other people, they'll start to develop other stuff. In the Vedas also, there are different kinds of intellectual systems, logical systems, and logic. But we're trained very much in this one of points and lines and how they're connected and these kind of things. But then we're talking about these other, which is usually aesthetic sensibilities and these kind of things. But usually many times what it is that the emotions are simply tied into superficial, sensuous experiences. So somebody will become angry or happy or warm and friendly and loving, depending on what's happening in their stomach. Like that. And then their intuitive values or what they're feeling externally. So many times in the intellect, which is basically sentiment also, but it's much more deeper in some senses. Then it's in contrast with that kind of muddle-headed, emotionality, which is correct, and it's not always bad. I mean, if you have proper stomach activity with your stomach and everything else, then it's okay. Scientists who have a regular meal, a good meal, in the day, and they're very clear-headed and they can use their logical abilities very well. Scientists who are snacking, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, their intellectual abilities become fuzzy, lousy, So in that sense, sentiment, when it just means basically superficial, sensuous experiences, then we we have to understand that and have our senses purified, and it encourages it. But beyond that, the gopis are just sentimental women. Yeah, but their sentiments so deep that it goes deeper even than the logical sentiments of Euclid and so on. So that's a little bit of a beginning idea. You know, does that give some perspective?
Yes, yes, of course. Sentiments are not the same. Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj.
And so, as you, I mean, I've developed it in terms of my perspective, but this is exactly what Lord Vishnu is telling Lord Brahma. You have to go ahead now and in your times, in your places, in your circumstances, investigate what's being said here, and then you develop your own system of logic. You know, as Uttamadhikari means that they have faith in the scriptures, and also they develop a logic, to put them together properly for themselves, and start to build their little logical boat. They turn it into a bigger boat, and can get more people in their boat. So we'll see you. We'll see you in about 1 week. No.
Yes, after you return from Bolivia, we will be there. Thank you.
And
so much.
also from Chile will be Jagat Guru and his good family, and then probably also will be coming and Gandharva, Lakshman. They'll be coming during the daytimes, and we'll have proper spacing and fresh air and everything else.
Okay.
We have very nice. Jagannath Charan was visiting us along with Mataji. Was very nice program. I can see all this, and what happens is all this hard work is very purifying. At 74 years old, tonight at midnight I'll be 70. My body will be 74 years or so.
Yes.
Not many people have cars that old. Only a Mercedes Benz maybe can make it. But I can see all this hard work and trying to be a good devotee and everything else in the middle of it. It's really purifying. It forces you, and then your chanting and everything else really goes deeper and deeper.
Yes.
So, any final comments or questions by other people here? Okay, we've been looking at the air tickets to go to Richmond, and now is the time to buy them. Rohini Devi Dasi, Subhasaka, Vrishabhanananda Yambarish, Ramalila Devi Dasi, Ramakrishna Nandadas, Parma Karunadas, Radha and Prahlad, Ramachintamani Devi Dasi, Mitravinda Devi Dasi, Lakshmi Radha Devi Dasi, Kama Gayatri. Okay, we're also looking for tickets to Boise. Alahianti doesn't have a flight. Jadana Shringa. Okay, see you in Spain. Jagatishwar. Indira Shakti Devi Dasi, the great artist. Professor Harsh Pradhan, from sitting under the Bodh Gaya tree, contemplating Buddha. Bhakti Gracias. Gandharvadas, Elena Doris Ricaldes. Carlos Viñas Trotonda. Wow. Carlos Orod. Chaitanya Charitamrita Das. TNT. Avsara Gopi Devi Dasi. We're going to sacrifice her in the fire of the Supreme Brahman and hope she comes back out again. So thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna, and smile at a lot of people today.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you very much.
Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, thank you.
Thank
Hare
you, Guru
Krishna.
Deva.
Gracias, Maharaj.
Jai Gurudev. Hari Bol.
Hanumatpresaka Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.